"Don't drink that," the waitress whispered to a millionaire, and saved him from his own wife. But what she uncovered next left the entire world speechless and destroyed an empire. But before we begin, subscribe now or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The crystal chandeliers of the Ocean Tower Hotel cast golden light across Miami's elite, their laughter echoing off marble walls that had witnessed 1,000 secrets. Sophia Bennett moved through the crowd like a shadow, her black uniform perfectly pressed, her face carefully neutral. After 3 years of this carefully constructed invisibility, she'd perfected the art of being seen without being noticed. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her name tag, a small tell she'd never quite managed to eliminate. The weight of her past pressed against her chest like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe in the perfumed air of old money and new power. Once, she'd been Dr. Sophia Bennett, chemical engineer with a promising future at Biotech Walsh. Once, she'd presented research at international conferences, her name whispered with respect in laboratories across 3 continents. Once, she'd believed that truth and talent were enough. That was before the explosion, before the accusations, before her entire world collapsed into a single devastating word: sabotage. "Table 7 needs champagne," Sarah called, barely glancing up from her tablet. Sophia nodded, gathering the bottle of Dom Perignon that cost more than her monthly rent. Her fingers knew the weight, the balance, the precise angle needed to pour without spilling a single golden drop. Muscle memory from a life she was trying desperately to forget. Among the glittering crowd, Adrian Cole commanded attention without seeming to try. Tall, perhaps 40, with steel-gray eyes that assessed everything with the cold precision of someone who'd built an empire from calculated risks. His dark suit was custom-tailored, his watch worth more than most people's cars. But it was the exhaustion around his eyes that caught Sophia's attention, a weariness that no amount of money could hide. Beside him, Helena Cole was a study in elegant perfection. Platinum blonde hair swept into an elaborate updo, diamonds at her throat catching the light with every calculated movement. Her smile was practiced, her laugh musical, her hand possessive on her husband's arm. Everything about her screamed careful curation, as if she'd designed herself to fit perfectly into this world of wealth and privilege. Sophia approached the table with practiced deference, her gaze lowered, her movements economical. 3 months she'd been serving this couple, and Adrian had never once looked at her as anything more than furniture, which was exactly how she preferred it. Anonymity was survival. She reached for Adrian's wine glass to refill it, and that's when her trained eye caught it, a faint greenish shimmer along the rim, barely visible under the chandelier light. Her heart stopped. The molecular composition was unmistakable to someone who'd spent years studying chemical compounds. Ricin-based, probably modified with a metallic catalyst to accelerate absorption. Her mind raced through calculations she'd sworn never to use again. Dosage, delivery method, time to onset. Whoever had prepared this knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't amateur work. The room seemed to slow around her. She could hear her own heartbeat, feel the familiar pull of her old life, the life where she'd understood dangerous compounds, where her knowledge had mattered, where she'd been someone who could save lives instead of just serving wine. Sophia leaned in, close enough that only Adrian could hear. Her voice was barely a whisper, urgent and raw. "Don't drink that." Adrian's head turned sharply, surprise flickering across his carefully controlled features. For the first time in 3 months, he actually looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes narrowed, assessing, questioning. Helena's laugh cut through the moment like glass. "Is something wrong with the service?" Her tone was light, but her eyes were cold as she studied Sophia with sudden, uncomfortable intensity. "The wine," Sophia said, her training overriding her fear. "There's contamination, chemical contamination." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Around them, conversations continued, oblivious to the small drama unfolding at table 7. But Adrian's expression had shifted to something sharp and focused. He set down the glass with deliberate care. "How do you know?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it, curiosity mixed with suspicion. Sophia's mouth went dry. She'd just revealed herself, stepped out of the shadows she'd worked so hard to maintain. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear back into anonymity before anyone asked the questions she couldn't afford to answer. But across the room, she saw another guest reach for an identical wine glass, saw him raise it to his lips in a casual toast. Her heart clenched. Not again. She couldn't stand by and watch someone die. Not again. "Sir, please," she started, but it was already too late. The guest's glass was empty. He smiled, continued his conversation, completely unaware that he'd just consumed poison meant for someone else. Everything was about to change. The chaos started slowly, then all at once. The man who'd drunk from the contaminated wine, Senator Dawson, Sophia recognized him from the tabloids, continued his animated conversation for perhaps 90 seconds. Then his words began to slur. His face flushed an unnatural red. His hand went to his throat, eyes widening in confusion that quickly became terror. He collapsed face first into his Dover sole, the crystal glass shattering against marble floor like a gunshot. The ballroom erupted. Screams pierced through Mozart. Chairs scraped back as guests scrambled away from the fallen man. Cell phones emerged, some calling 911, others already filming, because in Miami's elite circles, even tragedy was content. Sophia stood frozen, her medical training warring with her survival instinct. She knew what was happening inside Senator Dawson's body, the ricin binding to ribosomes, shutting down protein synthesis, cells dying in cascading waves. She knew he had minutes, maybe less. "Somebody help him!" a woman shrieked, her diamonds catching light as she gestured frantically. Hotel security converged on the scene, their radios crackling with urgent codes. The hotel manager appeared, pale and sweating, already calculating the lawsuit that would bury the Ocean Tower's reputation. Paramedics were en route, but Sophia knew they'd arrived too late without immediate intervention. She took one step forward, then stopped. Helping meant exposing her knowledge. Exposing her knowledge meant questions. Questions meant discovery. Discovery meant her carefully rebuilt life would collapse again. But before she could decide, Helena's voice cut through the pandemonium like a blade. "It was her!" Helena pointed directly at Sophia, her perfectly manicured finger trembling with theatrical precision. "I saw her switch the glasses. She must have put something in the wine." Every eye in the ballroom turned to Sophia. Camera phones swiveled in her direction. The crowd's energy shifted from panic to anger with frightening speed, like sharks sensing blood in water. "No," Sophia started, but security was already moving toward her. "She warned my husband not to drink," Helena continued, her voice rising with manufactured hysteria. "She knew. She knew because she poisoned it herself." Adrian stood abruptly, his face unreadable. "Helena, that's not—" "She tried to kill you." Helena grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face in a performance worthy of an Oscar. "She warned you because she wanted to look like a hero, but she meant to poison someone at this table." The logic was insane, but the crowd was already convinced. Sophia could see it in their faces. The hunger for a villain, the relief of having someone to blame, the self-righteous fury of the wealthy confronting perceived betrayal. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." The security guard's hand closed around her wrist, not gentle. "I didn't. I was trying to help." Sophia's words tumbled out desperately, but she could hear how they sounded. Guilty, panicked, exactly like someone who'd been caught. They pulled her hands behind her back. The zip-tie cuffs bit into her wrists, plastic cutting into skin. The sensation catapulted her back 3 years. Different city, different accusation, same crushing feeling of helpless rage as the world decided she was guilty before asking if she was innocent. "Please," she whispered, but no one was listening. Camera flashes exploded like stars behind her eyes as they marched her through the ballroom. She caught fragments of conversation. "Chemical engineer," someone said, the words bitter with accusation. Somehow they already knew. Had Helena researched her, planned this? The realization hit like ice water. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. Outside, Miami rain fell in sheets, turning the elegant hotel entrance into a waterlogged chaos of flashing lights and urgent voices. The police had arrived with impressive speed, too fast, Sophia's analytical mind noted even through panic, as if someone had called them before Senator Dawson collapsed. They loaded her into the back of a patrol car, the seat still warm from whoever had occupied it last. Through rain-streaked windows, Sophia watched the Ocean Tower recede into colored blurs of light and water. Her reflection stared back from the glass, mascara running, uniform disheveled, eyes hollow with the familiar devastation of being destroyed by something she didn't do. Again, she whispered to her reflection. Again. They're destroying me again. Back at the hotel, she couldn't see Adrian Cole standing in the rain, watching the patrol car disappear. Couldn't see the way his jaw tightened, or how his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Couldn't see him turn to his wife with an expression that was no longer husband, but investigator. Helena dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the tears already stopping now that the cameras were focused elsewhere. "Thank God you're safe," she murmured, reaching for Adrian's hand. He pulled away. "The lab report," he said quietly. "I want it within the hour." Something flickered across Helena's perfect face, too quick to name, too telling to miss. "Of course, darling. Whatever you need." But Adrian was already walking toward his car, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. Because the woman who'd warned him not to drink had known things, chemical things, specific things, that a hotel waitress shouldn't know. And Adrian Cole hadn't built an empire by ignoring inconsistencies. The morning after her release, Sophia Bennett stood behind the counter of Cafe Mercado, a hole-in-the-wall spot in Little Havana where questions weren't asked and cash was king. Her hands moved automatically, espresso, steam, pour, while her mind replayed the humiliation of being processed, fingerprinted, photographed like a criminal. Again, they'd released her on lack of evidence, but the damage was done. Her face was already circulating online. Mystery waitress and poisoning scandal. The Ocean Tower had terminated her employment via text message at 3 a.m. Her landlord had called twice, voice tight with concern about the situation. She was running out of places to hide. The cafe door chimed, letting in humid Miami air and the man she least expected to see. Adrian Cole looked wrong in this space, too polished, too expensive, like a Rolex in a pawn shop. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a simple button-down, but money had a way of announcing itself regardless of costume. The way he moved, the confidence in his posture, the watch that probably cost more than the cafe's annual revenue. Their eyes met. Sophia's hands stilled on the espresso machine. He crossed to the counter with deliberate steps, ignoring the curious stares from the handful of early morning customers. When he spoke, his voice was low, controlled, designed to carry only to her ears. "We need to talk. I'm working," Sophia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "No, you're hiding." His gray eyes assessed her with uncomfortable precision. "And doing a poor job of it, considering your face is on half the news sites in Florida." She flinched. He wasn't wrong. "I didn't poison anyone," she said quietly. "I know." The words were simple, absolute. Senator Dawson survived. The lab report came back an hour ago. Ricin derivative, metallic catalyst, designed for rapid absorption. Sophisticated work. Sophia's breath caught. The specificity of his description wasn't accidental. He was testing her, watching for recognition. "Then why are you here?" she asked. Adrian leaned against the counter, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "Because a hotel waitress shouldn't be able to identify ricin contamination by sight. Because you knew exactly what was in that glass before anyone tested it. Because everything about you is wrong." The word hung between them like an accusation and a question. Sophia's pulse hammered in her throat. She could lie, deflect, disappear into another city with another fake name and another service job that kept her invisible. Or she could tell the truth to someone who might actually listen. "Who are you, really?" Adrian pressed. The cafe felt too small suddenly, walls closing in. Sophia untied her apron with hands that trembled slightly. "Not here." They walked to Bayfront Park, the morning sun turning Biscayne Bay into hammered silver. Joggers passed, oblivious to the conversation about to shatter carefully constructed lies. Sophia stopped at a bench facing the water, her arms wrapped around herself despite the heat. Adrian stood beside her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the weight of his attention. "I saved someone's life once," she began, voice barely above a whisper. 4 years ago. I was a chemical engineer at Biotech Walsh. We were developing a new pharmaceutical compound, revolutionary cancer treatment, targeted cellular intervention. I was lead researcher." Adrian said nothing, but she felt him listening with complete focus. One of my colleagues, Derek Walsh, the founder's nephew, was cutting corners, substituting cheaper reagents, falsifying purity tests. I caught it during a routine audit. The compound he was using would have caused organ failure in human trials. Her hands clenched into fists. I reported him. Followed protocol exactly. What happened? 3 days later, there was an explosion in my lab. No one died, but the damage was catastrophic. Millions in equipment destroyed, years of research lost. And somehow, her voice cracked slightly. Every piece of evidence pointed to me. Falsified emails, forged requisition forms. Testimony from colleagues who swore I'd been unstable, erratic, obsessed with Derek. The memory tasted like ash. She could still smell the smoke, still hear the alarms, still feel the cold shock of betrayal as people she'd trusted called her a saboteur. They couldn't prove it criminally, Sophia continued, but they didn't have to. My reputation was destroyed, my credentials questioned. Every lab I applied to found reasons not to hire me, so I disappeared. She finally turned to face him. I became someone who serves coffee and keeps her head down and tries very hard not to notice things like rice and derivatives in expensive wine. Adrian's expression was unreadable. The compound you mentioned, what was it called? BT7 Metallic Catalyst Series. The technical term came automatically. Why? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Because that's exactly what was in Senator Dawson's glass. Your compound. Your signature work. The words hit like a physical blow. Sophia's vision swam slightly, the bay blurring into abstraction. That's impossible. The formula was proprietary, locked behind security protocols, unless someone who had access kept samples. Someone who might want to use your own creation to frame you. Adrian pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo. Do you recognize this man? Sophia stared at the image. Derek Walsh, older but unmistakable, standing beside Helena Cole at some charity function. Both smiling, both looking like they owned the world. Her breath stopped entirely. Derek Walsh is your business partner, she whispered. Was. We dissolved the partnership 6 months ago after I discovered financial irregularities. Adrian's voice went cold. He walked away with a substantial settlement and apparently a grudge. And my wife, he paused, something raw flickering across his face, has been in contact with him despite claiming they barely knew each other. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. The poison that matched her exact formula, Helena's immediate accusation, the two convenient evidence pointing to Sophia. This wasn't random violence. This was surgical revenge, years in the making. They're working together, Sophia said. They tried to kill you and frame me in one move. Adrian nodded slowly, and they almost succeeded. Why are you telling me this? Her voice shook. Why aren't you going to the police? He turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw past the billionaire facade to something rawer underneath. Anger, betrayal, and something that looked almost like respect. Because I need proof. Because they're careful and connected and one step ahead. And because, he held her gaze steadily, the woman who saved my life deserves better than being destroyed twice for telling the truth. Sophia's throat tightened with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. Or the terrifying possibility that someone might actually believe her. What do you want from me? She asked. Help me prove it, Adrian said simply. Help me destroy them the way they tried to destroy us. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the bay into liquid gold. Sophia thought about running, about disappearing again, about the safe emptiness of invisibility. Then she thought about Derek Walsh's smug face, about Helena's theatrical tears, about every person who'd called her crazy, unstable, guilty. Okay, she said. Let's burn them down. Helena Cole stood in her walk-in closet, phone pressed to her ear, voice pitched low despite being alone in the penthouse. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Miami stretched out like a jeweled circuit board, oblivious to the small war being waged 30 stories up. He knows something's wrong, she said, selecting a Chanel dress with practiced efficiency. He's been distant, watching me. Derek Walsh's voice came through crisp and unconcerned. Then we move faster. The waitress is already discredited. One more push and she's facing criminal charges. Adrian's not stupid. Helena's reflection stared back from the mirror, perfectly styled, expertly made up, the mask she'd worn for 5 years of calculated marriage. He's asking questions about the lab reports, about timing. Let him ask. We've covered everything. Derek's confidence grated on her nerves. He'd always been too arrogant, too certain of his own cleverness. It was why she'd chosen him. Useful idiots were easy to manipulate, but useful idiots could also become liabilities. What about the compound? If he traces it back to biotech, he won't. The facility was destroyed, remember? All physical evidence went up in smoke thanks to our dear Sophia. Derek laughed, the sound sharp and unpleasant. Besides, Adrian trusts you. Rich men always trust their beautiful wives right up until the moment we take everything. Helena ended the call without goodbye, staring at her reflection with clinical assessment. The dress fit perfectly, elegant but not ostentatious, expensive but not flashy. The costume of a devoted wife concerned about her husband's safety. She'd been playing this role for 5 years, ever since she'd realized Adrian Cole was worth more dead than alive. The prenup was ironclad, but life insurance was generous, and a widow garnered sympathy that a divorcee never could. But first, she needed him to trust her again. Adrian arrived home late, his expression closed off in ways Helena had learned to read. He moved through the penthouse like a stranger, pouring scotch without offering her wine, settling into his study without the usual ritual of asking about her day. Helena followed, champagne flute in hand, every movement choreographed. "Darling, we need to talk about what happened." "Do we?" Adrian didn't look up from his laptop. "That woman, Sophia Bennett. I've been doing research." Helena set down her glass, leaning against his desk with calculated vulnerability. "She was fired from Biotech Walsh 4 years ago. Accusations of sabotage, unstable behavior. Adrian, she's dangerous." "Is she?" He finally met her gaze, and something in his eyes made her stomach clench. Or was she convenient? "I don't understand." "Don't you?" Adrian closed his laptop with deliberate care. The poison used was a ricin derivative with metallic catalyst. Very specific, very sophisticated, the kind of thing that requires advanced chemical engineering knowledge. Helena's heart rate accelerated, but her face remained perfectly concerned. "Then she's exactly who I said she was. Or someone wanted it to look that way." Adrian stood, moving to the window. "Tell me about your relationship with Derek Walsh." The question landed like a knife between ribs. Helena forced a laugh, light and confused. "Derek? We've met at charity functions, but I barely know him. Why?" "Because I pulled phone records. You've called him 47 times in the past 6 months, including twice the day before the poisoning." Adrian turned, and his expression was no longer husband, but prosecutor. "Want to try again?" Panic flared hot in Helena's chest, but she'd built a career on controlling reactions. Tears came easily. She'd practiced them. "You're having me investigated?" "Adrian, how could you?" "Answer the question, Helena." She let her voice break, convincingly. "He was helping me plan a surprise for your birthday. I wanted to partner with Biotech for a charitable foundation in your name." The calls were about funding, venues. The lie flowed smooth as silk because she'd prepared it weeks ago. Always have a backup story. Adrian studied her for a long moment. She could see him wanting to believe, wanting the woman he'd married to be real instead of performance. "Show me the emails," he said quietly. "What?" "The planning emails, for this foundation." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Show me now, Helena, or I call my lawyers." Her mind raced. She'd fabricated phone call logs, but emails were traceable, forensic. Derek had promised to create a paper trail, but she didn't know if he'd actually done it. Couldn't risk it. So she pivoted to the only weapon that had never failed her: feminine fragility. Helena's legs buckled, not quite a collapse, just enough to seem overwhelmed. She sank onto the leather sofa, hands covering her face. "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through, you think I'd God, Adrian. I was trying to do something nice." The sobs were real now, fueled by genuine fury at being caught, at this waitress bitch ruining everything, at Adrian for being smarter than anticipated. She felt him hesitate, saw the crack in his certainty. Men like Adrian Cole, powerful, analytical, controlled, had one weakness. They wanted to be good, wanted to believe the best in people, especially people they'd promised to love. "Helena," his voice softened marginally. She looked up, mascara artfully smudged. "I'm sorry. I should have told you about the foundation, but I wanted it to be a surprise. And now you think I'm—" Her voice broke again. "How can you even suggest I'd hurt you?" Adrian's jaw worked, doubt and suspicion warring across his features. Helena pressed her advantage, standing on shaky legs, moving close enough that he could smell her perfume, the one he'd given her for their anniversary. "I love you," she whispered, the biggest lie of all. "Everything I do is for us, for our future." His hands came up, and for a terrible moment she thought he'd push her away. Then his fingers touched her shoulders, grip firm but not gentle. Then explain the financial transfers, the offshore accounts I found linked to your maiden name. Helena's blood turned to ice. He'd gone deeper than she'd thought, found trails she'd believed were buried. Derek had sworn the accounts were untraceable. She needed to buy time, needed to get ahead of this before Adrian found everything. I can explain, she said, mind already calculating her next move. But not here, not like this. Please, darling, give me 24 hours. Let me show you everything. Let me prove I'm not. You have until tomorrow night, Adrian said, releasing her. And Helena, don't make the mistake of thinking I'm a fool. He walked out, leaving her alone in the study. Helena waited until she heard his bedroom door close. Then she grabbed her phone, fingers flying across the screen. To Derek, he knows. Accelerate everything. We end this now. The response came instantly, already in motion. The Bennett girl won't survive the week. Helena deleted the messages, her reflection in the darkened window showing something her husband had never seen, the cold calculation of a woman who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Dr. Victor Lang hadn't aged well in the 4 years since Sophia had last seen him. His hair had gone completely silver, deep lines etched around eyes that had witnessed too many corporate betrayals. But when he opened the door of his modest Coral Gables home and saw Sophia standing there, those eyes sharpened with recognition and something that looked like relief. Dr. Bennett, he said her title deliberately, a small act of rebellion against the world that had stripped it from her. I wondered if you'd ever come back. Sophia's throat tightened. I need your help, Victor. They're doing it again. He stepped aside without hesitation. Then we'd better stop them this time. The living room had been converted into a makeshift laboratory, computers humming, papers scattered across every surface, the organized chaos of a mind that never stopped working. Victor had been biotech's senior forensic analyst, the one person who'd believed Sophia's innocence even when the evidence screamed otherwise. It had cost him his career too. I've been tracking Derek Walsh for 3 years, Victor said, pulling up files on his main computer, waiting for him to make a mistake. He finally did. Sophia leaned over his shoulder, scanning the data. Her scientific training kicked in automatically, pattern recognition firing across neurons that had been dormant too long. These compound signatures match exactly what was used in the Ocean Tower poisoning. And look at this. Victor opened another window, revealing archived biotech documents. I kept copies of everything before they destroyed the servers. Your original research, your protocols, your signatures. The screen showed her own handwriting, notes from 4 years ago detailing the exact metallic catalyst composition. Seeing it felt like looking at a ghost. The person she'd been before, everything collapsed. The BT7 series was proprietary, Sophia said slowly. Only 3 people had full access to the formula. Me, Derek, and Dr. Patricia Reeves, who died in a car accident 6 months after your trial. Victor's voice went flat. Single vehicle collision, brake failure, very convenient timing. Sophia's stomach dropped. You think Derek killed her? I think Derek eliminates obstacles. Patricia was too ethical, asked too many questions about the modified compounds he was developing. Victor pulled up more files. After you left, he continued your research in secret, sold variants of BT7 to pharmaceutical companies under the table, made millions while you were serving coffee. The rage that flooded through Sophia was white-hot and familiar. She'd spent 4 years suppressing it, channeling it into invisibility, convincing herself that survival was enough. But seeing Derek's name attached to her work, her stolen work, ignited something she'd thought was dead. There's more, Victor continued. He opened a financial database that looked distinctly illegal. Derek Walsh dissolved his partnership with Coal Enterprises 6 months ago. Settlement was $30 million, but he's broke now. Gambling debts, bad investments. He needed money fast. So he partnered with Helena Cole. Sophia's mind raced through the implications. She wants Adrian dead for the inheritance. Derek wants revenge for being pushed out. And I'm the perfect scapegoat because everyone already thinks I'm unstable. Victor nodded grimly. They probably planned this for months. The poison, the setup, the media narrative. It's elegant, I'll give them that. How do we prove it? We already have. Victor gestured to his screens. Digital footprints don't lie. Derek accessed biotech archives 3 months ago, didn't know I'd left a backdoor in the system, downloaded your complete BT7 research. Then there's this. He pulled up a series of financial transactions. Helena Cole made payments to a shell company registered in Derek's name. 5 transfers over 6 months, totaling $200,000. The last one was 2 days before the poisoning. Sophia stared at the evidence, her scientific mind cataloging each piece. This is enough for the police. It's enough for Adrian Cole, Victor corrected. Police move slowly. Rich people with lawyers move slower. But a billionaire with resources and motivation? He smiled grimly. That's how you burn down empires. Adrian arrived an hour later, his Aston Martin looking absurdly expensive parked outside Victor's modest home. He moved through the door with barely contained energy, gaze immediately locking on the evidence displayed across multiple screens. Victor walked him through it methodically. Financial records, chemical signatures, timeline correlations. Adrian absorbed information like a weapon being loaded, each piece of evidence adding to his lethal focus. They've been planning this since I fired Derek, Adrian said finally, voice tight with controlled fury. Helena played the loving wife while plotting my murder. And Derek, his jaw clenched, used Sophia's own research to frame her. Poetic and vicious. The question is what we do now, Victor said. This evidence is strong but circumstantial. A good lawyer could argue coincidence, misinterpretation. Then we make them confess. Adrian pulled out his phone. I have resources they don't know about. Private investigators, forensic accountants, security experts who owe me favors. If there's more evidence, we'll find it. Sophia watched him transform from wounded husband to calculating strategist. This was the man who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. Ruthless when necessary. Brilliant always. There's another option, she said quietly. Both men turned to her. We bait them into making a mistake. They think I'm discredited, helpless. They think you're grieving and distracted. We use that. Adrian studied her with new appreciation. What did you have in mind? Helena wants you dead. Derek wants me destroyed. So we give them an opportunity too good to resist. Sophia's hand steadied as purpose replaced fear. We let them think they're winning. And we record everything. Victor frowned. That's dangerous. If they realize it's a trap, they won't, Sophia interrupted. Because I'm going to give a press interview. Play the traumatized victim. Say I'm considering leaving the country. Helena will panic, push for faster action. People make mistakes when they're desperate. You're talking about making yourself bait, Adrian said flatly. I'm talking about fighting back. Sophia met his gaze steadily. I ran last time I hid. I let them win because I was too scared to fight. Not again. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Respect mixing with concern. If we do this, we do it right. Full security detail. Wired for sound. Backup at every location. I won't let them hurt you. The protectiveness in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through Sophia's chest. For 4 years, she'd been alone. Now, impossibly, she had allies. People who believed her. People willing to fight. Then let's give them enough rope to hang themselves, she said. Victor began typing rapidly, pulling up media contacts and security protocols. Adrian made calls, his voice clipped and authoritative as he assembled his team. And Sophia sat at the computer, drafting the interview that would either vindicate her or destroy her completely. The war was no longer hidden in shadows. It was about to become very, very public. The interview aired at 7 p.m. on Channel 8 News. Sophia sitting in soft lighting designed to make her look vulnerable and sympathetic. She'd dressed carefully, simple clothing, minimal makeup, the appearance of someone barely holding together. Every word had been scripted with Victor's help, designed to provoke maximum reaction. I just want my life back, Sophia told the camera, her voice breaking at precisely the right moment. I tried to help, and now I'm being crucified for it. I'm considering leaving the country. Maybe in Europe, people will actually listen before they judge. In the penthouse 30 stories above Miami, Helena Cole watched with champagne in hand and murder in her heart. The Bennett woman was running. Perfect. Fleeing suspects looked guilty, and guilty suspects didn't require complicated frame jobs. She dialed Derek immediately. She's leaving. We need to move now. Patience, Derek said, but she could hear the excitement in his voice. Let her run. Makes our job easier. Suspicious death in a foreign country. Case goes cold. Everyone forgets. No. Helena's grip tightened on her glass. I want this finished. I want her gone before Adrian digs any deeper. He's already digging, Helena. He froze 3 of your accounts this morning. The champagne glass shattered against marble tile, golden liquid spreading like blood. Helena stared at the mess, mind racing. Adrian was moving faster than anticipated. She'd underestimated his attachment to the truth. "Then we accelerate everything," she said coldly. "The Bennett girl dies tonight. Make it look like suicide. Guilt-ridden engineer couldn't live with what she'd done. I'll handle Adrian." "How?" Helena smiled at her reflection in the darkened window. "The same way I've handled every man in my life, by being exactly what he needs me to be." What Helena didn't know was that her phone had been compromised for the past 6 hours. Every word she spoke was being recorded in crystalline clarity, transmitted to Adrian's security team and stored on servers in 3 different countries. Adrian sat in Victor's converted laboratory, listening to his wife plot murder with the same casual tone she used to order dinner. Each word was a knife between ribs, destroying whatever illusion he'd been clinging to. "She's not even pretending anymore," Victor said quietly. "She thinks she's winning." Adrian's voice was hollow. 5 years of marriage reduced to performance art and poison. How did I not see it? Sophia touched his shoulder gently, a simple gesture that somehow steadied him. "Because she's good at what she does. Sociopaths usually are." The phone intercept crackled with new conversation. Derek's voice. "I've got people watching Bennett's apartment. She shows up, we move. Quick, clean, untraceable. Record everything," Adrian said to Victor. "I want documentation so thorough that no lawyer can spin this. And Sophia," he turned to her, "you're not going anywhere near that apartment." "They need to think I'm falling into their trap," Sophia argued. "If I don't show, they'll know something's wrong." "Absolutely not. We'll use a decoy, someone from my security team. You're staying here where it's safe." The protectiveness in his tone made Sophia's heart skip. She wanted to argue, to insist on facing her demons directly. But the expression on Adrian's face stopped her, raw and vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with strategy and everything to do with the realization that he couldn't bear to lose anyone else. "Okay," she said softly. "We do it your way." At 11 p.m., a woman matching Sophia's height and build approached the apartment building in Little Havana, hoodie pulled up against the rain. She moved with deliberate visibility, ensuring she could be seen by anyone watching. 3 blocks away, Derek Walsh sat in a rented sedan, watching through binoculars. "Target approaching," confirming visual. "Take her inside," Helena's voice commanded through his earpiece. "No witnesses. Stage it clean." Derek signaled to his hired muscle, 2 men with the dead eyes of career criminals. They moved toward the building entrance with practiced efficiency. What they didn't see were the 6 undercover police officers positioned at strategic points around the block, or the FBI agents monitoring from the surveillance van parked across the street, or the cameras recording everything from 4 different angles. The decoy entered the building. Derek's men followed. And then, "Police! Hands where we can see them!" The shout echoed through the narrow hallway. Derek's men froze, confusion flickering across their faces before training kicked in. One reached for a weapon. Bad mistake. Officers swarmed from concealed positions, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The 2 men went down hard, faces pressed to cracked linoleum, while cuffs clicked into place. Derek watched from his car, paralyzed by disbelief. This wasn't possible. They'd planned everything, covered every angle. His phone rang. Helena, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "What's happening? I'm seeing police activity on the traffic cameras." "It's a trap. They knew. We have to." Blue and red lights flooded his rearview mirror. Derek's hands tightened on the steering wheel, survival instinct screaming at him to run. But there was nowhere to go. The sedan was blocked front and back, officers approaching with weapons drawn. "Derek Walsh, exit the vehicle with your hands visible." He sat frozen, watching his reflection in the rearview mirror, the face of a man who'd been absolutely certain of his own cleverness, right up until the moment it all collapsed. In the penthouse, Helena stood at the windows, champagne forgotten, watching Miami's glittering lights and knowing with sick certainty that it was over. Her phone vibrated with incoming messages. Lawyers, publicists, contacts scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal already breaking across news feeds. The penthouse door opened. Adrian walked in flanked by 2 FBI agents, his expression carved from ice. "Helena Cole," the female agent said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. This is absurd." Helena's voice came out steady, controlled. Even now she couldn't abandon the performance. "Adrian, tell them." "I've told them everything." Adrian's voice was quiet, deadly. "They have recordings, Helena. financial records, testimony from Derek Walsh, who's currently negotiating immunity in exchange for cooperation. It's over. Helena stared at him, searching for cracks in his certainty, some angle to exploit. She'd always been able to read him, manipulate him. But the man standing before her was a stranger, or perhaps the real Adrian Cole, no longer filtered through her deceptions. "You poisoned the love and the blood," Adrian said softly. "But you made one critical mistake. You underestimated the woman whose life you tried to destroy, and you forgot that some people actually care about truth more than money." The handcuffs clicked around Helena's wrists, cold metal destroying the last remnants of her carefully constructed empire. Camera flashes exploded from the street below as news crews captured her perp walk, the elegant socialite in designer dress being led away in handcuffs. Everything she'd built, every lie she'd told, reduced to 15 seconds of viral video and a mugshot that would define her forever. Adrian watched her go, feeling nothing but exhausted relief. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed Sophia. "It's done," he said simply. "They're both in custody. You're safe now." On the other end of the line, Sophia Bennett finally allowed herself to cry. The Ocean Tower Auditorium was packed to capacity. Journalists, investors, board members, and curious onlookers who'd followed the scandal from its explosive beginning. Camera crews lined the back wall, their lenses trained on the empty podium like weapons waiting to fire. Helena Cole arrived in handcuffs, her lawyer beside her arguing futilely for house arrest. She'd dressed impeccably despite spending the night in a holding cell. Valentino suit, hair styled, makeup flawless. Even facing destruction, she understood the power of image. Her chin lifted as she was escorted to a seat in the front row, playing the role of innocent victim one last time. Adrian stood backstage, his reflection in the mirror showing exhaustion he no longer bothered to hide. He'd slept 3 hours in the past 2 days, surviving on coffee, and the cold fury that came from discovering your entire marriage had been performance art. "You don't have to do this," Victor said quietly beside him. "The evidence speaks for itself. Let the prosecutors handle it." "No." Adrian straightened his tie with deliberate precision. "She destroyed lives publicly. She dies publicly too. Not literally," he added at Victor's expression. "But everything she built, every lie she told, it ends today in front of everyone." Sophia appeared in the doorway, looking small and uncertain in borrowed professional clothing. She'd refused to hide during the press conference, insisting on being present when the truth finally came out. Adrian felt something shift in his chest at her courage. This woman who'd lost everything twice and still chose to stand rather than run. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "Let's finish this." Adrian walked onto the stage to a cacophony of camera shutters and shouted questions. He raised one hand and the room fell silent with the automatic deference given to power and money. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice carrying clearly through the acoustics. "I've called this conference to address the events of the past week and to announce significant changes to Cole Enterprises' structure and leadership." The journalist leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. 8 days ago, an attempt was made on my life using a sophisticated poison delivered through contaminated wine. A courageous woman named Sophia Bennett prevented my death by recognizing the compound before I consumed it. He paused, letting that sink in. She was subsequently arrested, publicly humiliated and accused of the very crime she'd prevented. On the screen behind him, footage appeared, security camera stills of Sophia whispering to him, Helena pointing accusingly, the chaos that followed. The audience murmured, recognizing the viral images that had dominated news cycles. "What you didn't know, what I didn't know, was that Ms. Bennett is a trained chemical engineer who once worked for Biotech Walsh. She recognized the poison because she'd helped develop it 4 years ago, before she was falsely accused of sabotage, before her career was destroyed by the same man who tried to kill me." Adrian clicked to the next slide. Derek Walsh's face appeared, followed by financial records showing his partnership with Cole Enterprises and subsequent termination. "Derek Walsh harbored a grudge against me for ending our business relationship. He also harbored extensive gambling debts and a complete lack of conscience. So he approached someone equally motivated by greed and equally devoid of moral constraint." The screen changed to show Helena, and the audience gasped collectively. She sat motionless in her seat, face carved from marble, but Adrian saw the rage burning in her eyes. "My wife," Adrian continued, voice going cold. Helena Cole conspired with Derek Walsh to murder me and frame Sophia Bennett. The poison used was Ms. Bennett's own research, stolen from biotech archives. The setup was elaborate, patient, and nearly successful. He clicked again. Audio waveforms appeared, followed by text transcripts. Fortunately, we have evidence. Phone recordings of Helena and Derek planning my death. Financial transfers from Helena to shell companies controlled by Derek. Witness testimony from the men they hired to kill Ms. Bennett when framing her proved insufficient. And this? The screen filled with a video recording. Helena's voice, crystal clear. The Bennett girl dies tonight. Make it look like suicide. I'll handle Adrian. The room erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Cameras swiveled to capture Helena's face, pale now, mascara beginning to run as the performance finally cracked. You're lying. Helena's voice cut through the chaos, theatrical to the last. Those recordings are fabricated. He's trying to destroy me because you tried to poison me? Adrian's voice carried over hers, amplified and absolute. Because you married me for money and planned my death before the ink dried on our prenuptial agreement? Or because you're a sociopath who spent 5 years playing house while plotting murder? Helena lunged from her seat, handcuffs jangling, being restrained by officers as her lawyer frantically tried to control the damage. But it was too late. Every camera in the room captured her breakdown. The screaming, the accusations, the complete dissolution of the elegant mask she'd worn so carefully. Take her out, Adrian said quietly to the officers. They dragged her toward the exit, Helena shrieking about injustice and conspiracies, her designer heels scraping against marble as she fought uselessly against reality. The door closed behind her, muffling her protests. Adrian turned back to the audience, his expression carved from stone. Cole Enterprises will be implementing immediate reforms, full transparency protocols, independent ethics review boards, and a new research division focused on chemical safety, headed by Dr. Sophia Bennett. He gestured, and Sophia walked onto the stage. She moved stiffly, visibly terrified, but she moved. The applause started slowly, then built. A standing ovation from journalists and investors who recognized courage when they saw it. Ms. Bennett saved my life twice, Adrian said into the microphone. Once by recognizing poison, and once by refusing to let lies win. The least I can do is help her reclaim what was stolen. Sophia stood beside him, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. But she didn't need to. The truth spoke loudly enough. In the front row, an FBI agent leaned toward his partner. That's what justice looks like when rich people actually give a damn. His partner nodded. Doesn't happen often. Enjoy it. Outside, news vans scrambled to broadcast the conference live. Within an hour, it would be trending worldwide. The billionaire who exposed his wife's murder plot, the engineer who'd been vindicated, the dramatic collapse of a woman who'd thought beauty and cunning were enough. Helena Cole's empire of lies had finally, spectacularly, burned to the ground. Derek Walsh was arrested at Miami International Airport, gate pass in hand for a one-way flight to Dubai. He'd shaved his head, dyed his eyebrows, carried a passport with a different name. All the cliched moves of a man who'd watched too many spy movies and believed himself cleverer than reality. The FBI agents who took him down did so with professional efficiency, barely causing a scene among the travelers who filmed everything on their phones. Within minutes, Derek's face was viral, another rich man brought low by arrogance and stupidity. In the interrogation room, he tried charm first. This is a misunderstanding. Helena Cole manipulated me. I was trying to help Adrian. The lead detective slid a folder across the table. That's funny because we have recordings of you planning Bennett's murder. Your voice, your words. Quick, clean, untraceable. Ring any bells? Derek's practiced smile faltered. He tried indignation next. Those recordings are inadmissible. You violated single-party consent state, the detective interrupted. And the party who consented was Adrian Cole, who you attempted to murder. So yeah, they're very admissible, along with the financial record showing you've been embezzling from former partners for 6 years, and the testimony from your hired muscle, who are very eager to reduce their sentences by cooperating. The color drained from Derek's face. I want my lawyer. You're going to need a good one, the detective said cheerfully. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement. You're looking at 25 to life. Probably life, given the whole trying to kill a billionaire thing. Judges tend to frown on that. Derek stared at the evidence folder, watching his future collapse into concrete and bars. He'd been so certain of his intelligence, so convinced that careful planning and ruthless execution would bring the success he deserved. Instead, he'd underestimated a waitress and lost everything. "I could testify against Helena," he said desperately. "Tell you everything." "Immunity deal?" "Already offered one to your hired guys. They took it." The detective stood. "You've got nothing we need, Walsh. You're just another criminal who thought money made him untouchable. Enjoy your cell." The trial lasted 6 weeks and dominated headlines across continents. Reporters dissected every detail: Helena's coldly calculated marriage, Derek's history of fraud, Sophia's wrongful destruction 4 years prior. True crime podcasts devoted entire seasons to the case. Documentary producers competed for rights to the story. Sophia watched from the gallery as prosecutors methodically destroyed Helena's defense. Every lie was exposed, every manipulation catalogued, every victim given voice. The woman who'd seemed so powerful, so untouchable, shrank daily under the weight of her own crimes. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Helena stood motionless as the judge pronounced sentence. 20 years without possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in camera flashes and gasps. Helena turned, scanning the gallery until her eyes found Adrian's. For a moment, the mask slipped completely. Sophia saw raw hatred there, the kind of bone-deep loathing that comes from losing everything to people you'd considered beneath you. Then officers were escorting her away, and she was gone. Derek received an identical sentence in a separate courtroom, his trial less dramatic but equally decisive. His lawyer had tried every angle: temporary insanity, undue influence, Miranda violations, all crashing against the mountain of evidence Victor and Adrian had compiled. When Derek was sentenced, he didn't look at anyone. Just stared straight ahead, face blank, already beginning the psychological process of accepting that most of his remaining life would be measured in concrete squares and scheduled meals. Outside the courthouse, Sophia stood in Miami sunshine that felt impossibly bright after weeks of fluorescent legal proceedings. Reporters shouted questions, but Adrian's security team held them back with professional courtesy. "Dr. Bennett, how does it feel to be vindicated?" Sophia thought about the question. 4 years of hiding, of fear, of believing she'd never get her life back. 4 years of serving coffee while her research, her dreams, gathered dust. "It feels like breathing after drowning," she said simply. Adrian appeared beside her, his presence steady and grounding. He'd testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through financial records and recorded conversations with the clinical precision of someone who'd built an empire on facts. He'd been calm, controlled, devastating. Helena's lawyers had tried to paint him as a vindictive ex-husband. The evidence had painted him as a man who cared more about truth than revenge. "Victor's waiting at the car," Adrian said quietly. "Unless you want to do more interviews." Sophia shook her head. She'd said enough. Let the evidence speak from here. They walked through the crowd, security creating a buffer of space. At the car, Victor waited with a rare smile, looking years younger than he had a month ago. "Vindication had that effect. They're already calling you the billion-dollar whistleblower," Victor said as they drove away. "Media's having a field day with the story." "I didn't do it for publicity," Sophia said. "No," Adrian agreed. "You did it because it was right. That's rarer than you'd think." Their eyes met in the rearview mirror, a moment of shared understanding. They'd both lost things they couldn't get back. Helena had destroyed 5 years of Adrian's life. Derek had destroyed 4 of Sophia's, but they'd fought back and won. That had to count for something. "What happens now?" Sophia asked. Adrian leaned forward, and for the first time in weeks, something like hope crossed his features. "Now, we rebuild. Better than before. I have some ideas about that laboratory I mentioned." "Coal ethics research," Victor said. "Has a nice ring to it." Sophia felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest, not just relief or vindication, but actual hope. The kind she hadn't let herself feel in 4 years. The kind that believed the future might hold more than survival. "When do we start?" she asked. Adrian smiled. "How about tomorrow?" Tomorrow. A word that had once meant fear and hiding. Now it meant possibility. Sophia smiled back. "Tomorrow works." 6 months later, Sophia stood in the glass-walled laboratory of coal ethics research, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked Biscayne Bay. The space was everything she'd dreamed of during those long years of exile: state-of-the-art equipment, ethical oversight protocols, and a team chosen for integrity as much as brilliance. Her hands moved with practiced confidence over the spectroscopy equipment, analyzing a compound that could revolutionize cancer treatment. This was her element, where chemistry became poetry, where molecules danced in predictable patterns, where truth was absolute. Dr. Bennett, a young researcher named Maya, approached. The results from yesterday's trial are ready. Sophia pulled up the data, scanning numbers that told a story of success. The compound was stable, effective, and safe. Everything biotech Walsh should have been. Beautiful work, Sophia said, and Maya's face lit up. Let's move to phase 2 trials next month. Around them, the laboratory hummed with purposeful energy. 10 researchers, all people who'd been silenced by corporate corruption, now given a second chance. Adrian had funded the entire operation from his personal fortune. Science shouldn't answer to shareholders, he'd said. It should answer to truth. Sophia had fallen a little bit in love with him in that moment. The laboratory door opened, and Adrian walked in, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. He'd stepped back from Cole Enterprises, installing an ethics-focused CEO, and spending his time on projects that mattered. The stress lines around his eyes had softened. Losing everything had, paradoxically, freed him. "How's the wonder drug?" he asked, moving beside her. "Promising. We might actually cure something without bankrupting patients." Sophia pulled up projections. If phase 2 goes well, human trials within 18 months. Adrian studied the data with focused intelligence. "You're doing what you were meant to do." The words settled into her chest like warm stones. For so long, she'd believed her purpose had been stolen permanently. Now, standing in this laboratory with her name on the door, she felt whole again. "Thank you," she said, "for believing me, for all of this. You saved my life, Sophia. This is the least I could do." But they both knew it was more than that. Somewhere between evidence gathering and courtroom testimony, something had shifted between them. A connection deeper than gratitude. Neither had acknowledged it yet. The wounds were too fresh. That evening, the laboratory hosted a quiet celebration, 6 months since founding. Victor arrived with wine, checking labels with paranoid thoroughness that made everyone laugh. "Too soon?" he asked, grinning. "Always too soon," Sophia replied, accepting a glass anyway. As the sun set, turning the water to liquid gold, Sophia felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. Adrian raised his glass. "To second chances, to truth, and to the best team of scientists I've ever funded." They drank, and the wine was clean and pure, no hidden toxins, just shared success. Later, as the team filtered out, Sophia and Adrian found themselves alone on the balcony. The city stretched below them, millions of lights marking millions of lives. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd drunk that wine?" Adrian asked quietly. "Every day," Sophia admitted, "but I try to focus on what did happen. You're alive. They're in prison. We're here." "Here," Adrian repeated, and something in his tone made her look at him fully. His gray eyes reflected the city lights, but there was warmth there too, something that made her heart skip. "Sophia," he started, then stopped, uncertain. "I know the timing is complicated. I know we've both been through trauma. But when I look at you, I don't see the woman who saved my life. I see the woman who refused to stop fighting. I see brilliance and courage, and I can't stop thinking about you." Sophia's breath quickened. She'd felt it too, this pull between them. "The timing is terrible," she agreed, watching disappointment flicker across his features. "But I can't stop thinking about you either." Hope replaced disappointment. Adrian stepped closer. "So what do we do?" Sophia thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about whispering, "Don't drink that," to a stranger and changing both their lives. "We take it slow," she said. "We're honest. We don't let gratitude or fear dictate what we feel, and we see what happens." Adrian smiled, genuine and unguarded. "I can work with that." He reached out slowly. She didn't pull away. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. They stood like that as Miami glittered below, two people who'd survived betrayal, choosing to believe they deserved something good. "For what it's worth," Adrian said quietly, "I think you're the bravest person I've ever met." Sophia squeezed his hand. "You're not so bad yourself, for a billionaire." He laughed, the sound light and free. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked. "Somewhere quiet." "Just us." "Just us," Sophia echoed. and the words felt like a promise. 3 months passed like pages turning in a story Sophia was learning to trust. Dinner had led to more dinners, quiet conversations stretching into dawn, shared laughter over microscope slides. They moved carefully, two people learning that intimacy could exist without ulterior motives. Adrian proved himself patient. He never pushed, never used his wealth to accelerate what was growing between them. Instead, he showed up at the laboratory with coffee, at Victor's for Sunday dinners, in quiet moments when she needed someone to listen. Sophia published her first paper under restored credentials, a comprehensive analysis of chemical safety protocols that became required reading worldwide. Her name was clean now, better than clean. Pioneer in ethical research, the journals called her. You're changing things, Adrian told her one evening. Real systemic change. Helena tried to destroy you and instead made you invincible. Sophia smiled. Not invincible, just unwilling to hide anymore. They were in Adrian's penthouse, the same space where Helena had plotted murder, now completely redesigned. Adrian had stripped away her influence methodically. The space felt lighter now. I need to tell you something, Adrian said, setting down his wine. About why I married Helena. Sophia waited. I was 42 when we met, building an empire but living alone. Helena seemed genuinely interested in who I was beneath the money. He paused. I knew it was too good to be true, but I wanted to believe someone could love me for reasons that had nothing to do with my bank account. Adrian, with you, his voice softened. I've never questioned your motives. Not once. You're here because you choose to be, not because of what I can give you. Sophia moved closer, taking his hands. I'm here because you're brilliant and kind and you fought for truth. Because you make me laugh and challenge my theories and never made me feel like I owed you anything. She paused. And because I fell completely in love with you. Adrian's breath caught. Say that again. I love you, Sophia repeated. Inconveniently, impractically, completely. He kissed her then, finally closing the distance they'd maintained so carefully. His hands framed her face gently, reverently. She kissed him back, pouring 4 months of careful restraint into the connection. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. I love you too, Adrian said. Since you stood on that witness stand and destroyed Helena's defense with nothing but facts and courage. Sophia laughed. That's a terrible meet-cute story. The worst, he agreed. But it's ours. 2 weeks later, Coal Ethics Research held its official public launch. The laboratory gleamed in afternoon sunlight. Sophia stood at the podium, looking out at faces that represented second chances. Victor sat in the front row. Maya and the research team clustered together, excited, and Adrian stood slightly to the side, letting this moment be hers. A year ago I was serving coffee and hiding from my own name, Sophia began. I'd been destroyed by lies, convinced that justice was a fantasy. I was wrong. She paused. Truth is persistent. It survives burial and corruption. It waits for someone brave enough to speak it, and then it changes everything. Sophia gestured to the laboratory. This facility exists because people chose truth over convenience. Because sometimes, very rarely, the good guys actually win. The audience applauded. We're not here to make money. We're here to do science the right way, transparent, ethical, accountable. We're here to prove that brilliance and integrity can coexist. She looked directly at Adrian, letting him see everything, gratitude and love and fierce determination. So thank you. To Adrian Cole, who funded Impossible Dreams. To Victor Lang, who never stopped fighting. To everyone who believed that one waitress whispering, "Don't drink that," might be telling the truth. You saved my life. Let's spend it saving others. The applause was thunderous. Adrian met her halfway, pulling her into an embrace that felt like homecoming. You're incredible, he murmured. We're incredible, she corrected. Later, after the crowds dispersed, they stood on the balcony overlooking the bay. Adrian produced 2 glasses and the same vintage that had been poisoned. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Really? New bottle, independently verified, tested by 3 laboratories. He poured carefully. I refused to let her ruin good wine forever. Sophia studied it with the trained eye that had saved his life. Clear, clean, pure, to new beginnings, Adrian said. To truth, Sophia added. To us, they said together. They drank and the wine was perfect. No hidden poison. Just the simple pleasure of sharing something good with someone who mattered. Below them, Miami glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere in a federal prison, Helena Cole stared at concrete walls. Derek Walsh did the same elsewhere. But here, Sophia Bennett, Dr. Sophia Bennett, stood beside the man she loved and looked toward a future built on truth. The anonymous waitress had become the antidote to lies. The wine was clean. The love was real. The truth had won. Finally, the trial of Helena Cole attracted global attention in ways that transcended typical celebrity scandals. This wasn't just about wealth and murder. It was about institutional corruption, the vulnerability of truth, and whether justice could actually prevail against money and manipulation. The courthouse in downtown Miami became a media circus. Satellite trucks lined the streets, reporters from 3 continents jostled for position, and true crime enthusiasts camped overnight for gallery seats. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Helena entered in designer clothing, her legal team flanking her like an army. Even facing life imprisonment, she maintained the performance, chin lifted, expression serene, playing the role of wrongly accused sophisticate. Her lawyers had crafted a defense based on Adrian's supposed vindictiveness and Sophia's alleged instability. But evidence doesn't perform. It simply exists. The prosecution methodically dismantled every lie. Financial records showed Helena's payments to Derek Walsh, $200,000 transferred over 6 months. Phone recordings played in crystal clarity, her voice discussing murder with the casual tone of someone ordering lunch. Toxicology reports proved the poison matched Sophia's stolen formula exactly. "Ladies and gentlemen," the prosecutor said during closing arguments, "this wasn't passion or desperation. This was calculated, patient, ruthless. Helena Cole married for money and plotted murder before the honeymoon ended. She destroyed an innocent woman's career to frame her for a crime she herself committed. This is evil in expensive clothing." Sophia watched from the gallery as Helena's mask finally cracked. The woman who'd seemed so untouchable sat rigid, mascara running, hands trembling as the jury foreman stood. "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty." Each verdict landed like a hammer blow. Helena's composure shattered completely, she sobbed, clinging to her lawyer's arm, the performance finally abandoned in favor of genuine terror. This was real. The consequences were inescapable. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen every manipulation tactic imaginable, showed no mercy. "Mrs. Cole, you used your intelligence and resources not to build, but to destroy. You betrayed trust, corrupted institutions, and attempted to murder your husband while framing an innocent woman. The court sentences you to 20 years in federal prison without possibility of parole." The gavel fell with finality. Officers moved to escort Helena away, and she turned one last time, scanning the gallery. Her eyes found Adrian's, no longer pleading, but filled with pure hatred. Then Sophia's, promising revenge that would never come. Then she was gone, designer heels clicking against tile as they led her toward a future measured in concrete and regret. Derek Walsh's trial was less theatrical but equally decisive. His lawyers attempted every angle: temporary insanity, coercion by Helena, claims of false evidence. But Victor's meticulous documentation proved unbreakable. Every file, every recording, every financial transaction was verified and cross-referenced. When Derek took the stand in his own defense, the prosecution destroyed him with his own words. They played recordings where he'd bragged about the poisoning, laughed about framing Sophia, discussed murder like it was a business transaction. "You're proud of what you did," the prosecutor said, voice thick with disgust. "You destroyed Dr. Bennett's career 4 years ago, then tried to kill her when she interfered with your plans. You feel no remorse, only frustration at being caught." Derek's face remained blank, already detached. He'd lost, and he knew it. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. 20 years, matching Helena's sentence. As they led him away, Derek didn't look at anyone, just stared straight ahead, already beginning the psychological process of accepting that most of his life would be lived in a cage. Outside the courthouse, Sophia faced a wall of cameras and questions. She'd avoided most media attention during the trials, but this moment felt important. A final statement before moving forward. "Dr. Bennett, how does it feel to be vindicated?" Sophia thought carefully before answering. "It feels like breathing after drowning. For 4 years, I believed my life was over. That lies had won permanently. But truth is more persistent than I gave it credit for. It waited patiently, and when given the chance, it changed everything. What's next for you? Science, she said simply. Ethical research that helps people without destroying them. We're proving that integrity and innovation can coexist, and we're creating opportunities for others who've been silenced for telling uncomfortable truths. Do you have a message for others who've been falsely accused? Sophia's throat tightened. She thought about every person sitting in prison for crimes they didn't commit, everyone whose careers had been destroyed by powerful liars, everyone who'd lost hope that justice might eventually arrive. Don't stop fighting, she said firmly. Document everything. Find allies. Tell the truth even when it's dangerous. The system is imperfect and often unjust, but it can work if enough people refuse to accept lies as reality. You deserve to be believed. Keep fighting until you are. The reporters shouted more questions, but Adrian's security team created space for her to leave. As they drove away, Sophia watched the courthouse recede in the mirror. Helena and Derek would spend the next 2 decades behind bars, their empires of deception reduced to prison jumpsuits and supervised phone calls. Their names would become cautionary tales, their faces symbols of arrogance meeting consequence. But Sophia refused to define herself by their downfall. She was more than a victim who'd survived. She was a scientist, a partner, a woman who'd reclaimed her future. That evening at Victor's house, they celebrated quietly. Just the 3 of them, Sophia, Adrian, and the man who'd never stopped believing. To the good guys winning, Victor said, raising his glass. Occasionally, Adrian added with a slight smile. More than occasionally if we keep fighting, Sophia said. They drank and the wine was clean and sweet. No poison, no lies. Just the simple pleasure of shared triumph. The university called, Victor mentioned casually. They want you to lecture on research ethics. Offered you an adjunct professorship. Sophia's eyes widened. Really? Your name carries weight now. Not as the accused, but as the woman who exposed corruption and survived. Students need to hear that story. Adrian squeezed her hand. You're becoming what you were always meant to be. Not despite what happened, but because of how you handled it. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Good tears this time. The kind that came from hope instead of despair. She'd lost 4 years to lies and fear. But she'd gained something too. The unshakable knowledge that truth, while often delayed, was never truly defeated. I'll do it, she said. On one condition. We establish a scholarship fund for students who've been academically destroyed by false accusations. Give them a second chance like I got. Consider it done, Adrian said immediately. Victor smiled, pride evident in his weathered face. You 2 are going to change the world, one truth at a time. They stayed up late, planning futures built on integrity instead of deception. Outside, Miami glittered with possibility, a city of second chances and hard-won redemptions. Justice had been served. The good guys had won, and Sophia Bennett was finally, completely free. 1 year after the trials, Sophia and Adrian stood before a gleaming new building in Boston, glass and steel reaching toward a cloudless autumn sky. The brass plaque beside the entrance read, Bennett Cole Center for Scientific Ethics, for those who had the courage to say the truth. Victor stood beside them, looking years younger despite his silver hair. Mrs. Torres, Sophia's former landlord from Miami, had flown up for the ceremony, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Maya and the entire research team clustered together, excited and proud. And filling the plaza were students, scientists, journalists, and survivors. People who'd been silenced, falsely accused, destroyed by institutional corruption, now witnessing proof that redemption was possible. You're nervous, Adrian murmured, taking Sophia's hand. Terrified, she admitted. Public speaking was never my strength. You testified against Helena for 3 hours and destroyed her defense. This is just a speech. Sophia smiled despite her nerves. He had a point. The crowd quieted as she approached the microphone. Hundreds of faces looked up at her, some familiar, most strangers, all connected by the belief that truth mattered more than convenience. 2 years ago, Sophia began, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza. I was serving coffee in Little Havana and hiding from my own name. I'd been falsely accused of sabotage, watched my career implode, and convinced myself that survival meant invisibility. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. She paused, finding her rhythm. I was wrong that justice was impossible. Wrong that truth couldn't survive coordinated lies. Wrong that I had to face destruction alone. Because when I whispered, "Don't drink that," to a stranger in a hotel ballroom, I didn't just save his life. I saved my own. Adrian squeezed her hand, his expression warm with pride and love. This center exists because people chose integrity over self-interest, because a billionaire cared more about truth than reputation, because a forensic analyst kept evidence when ordered to destroy it, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, good people win. Sophia gestured to the building behind her. We're not here to make money or chase prestige. We're here to prove that ethical science is possible, that careers destroyed by lies can be rebuilt, that second chances aren't just fantasies for the privileged few. Every person who walks through these doors will find resources, support, and people who believe that truth is worth fighting for. Her voice strengthened with conviction. So, to everyone who's been silenced, your voices matter. To everyone falsely accused, your innocence deserves proof. To everyone who's fought corruption and lost, we're fighting with you now. You are not alone. Truth may be slow, but it's also inevitable, and we're here to help it arrive faster. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. People were crying, scientists who'd been blacklisted, students who'd been expelled for reporting misconduct, researchers who'd lost everything for refusing to falsify data. They were crying because someone finally understood. Someone finally cared. Sophia stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed by emotion. Adrian pulled her close, his arms steady and grounding. "You did it," he whispered. "You turned your worst nightmare into something that helps thousands." "We did it," she corrected. Victor joined them, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Patricia Reeves would be proud. All those scientists Derek destroyed, they're vindicated through what you've built." After the ceremony, they cut the ribbon together, Sophia, Adrian, and Victor, 3 people who'd fought corruption and survived. The doors opened, and the crowd flowed inside to tour laboratories designed for transparency, offices equipped for whistleblower support, classrooms dedicated to teaching ethics alongside science. Later, as the sun set behind Boston's skyline, Sophia and Adrian stood alone on the center's rooftop terrace. The city spread below them, thousands of lights marking thousands of lives, each one a story of struggle and occasional triumph. Adrian produced 2 glasses and a familiar bottle, the same vintage that had been poisoned 2 years ago. Sophia laughed. "You're obsessed with this wine. It's symbolic," Adrian said, pouring carefully. "Helena tried to turn something good into poison. I refused to let her win that small victory. This wine is just wine. Clean, pure, harmless." Sophia accepted her glass, studying it with the trained eye that had saved his life. No greenish shimmer, no metallic sheen. Just golden liquid catching the fading light. "To new beginnings," Adrian said, raising his glass. "To truth," Sophia added. "To us," they said together as they had a year ago. They drank, and the wine was perfect, complex and smooth, with none of the bitterness that had defined their first encounter. Just the simple pleasure of sharing something good with someone who mattered deeply. "Marry me," Adrian said suddenly. Sophia nearly dropped her glass. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, setting down his wine and turning to face her fully. "Not because you saved my life or because we survived trauma together. Marry me because I love you, because you challenge me and inspire me and make me believe that building something good is more important than protecting something broken. Because when I imagine my future, you're in every part of it." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful but not flashy. Exactly her style. "I know the timing is strange," Adrian continued. "I know we've only been together a year, but I'm 45 years old and I've learned that life is too short to wait for perfect moments. This is our moment, Sophia. Say yes." Sophia's vision blurred with tears. She thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, broken, hiding, convinced her life was over. She thought about whispering, "Don't drink that," and changing both their lives forever. She thought about building a center dedicated to truth, surrounded by people who believed integrity mattered. She thought about this man who'd fought for her when he could have simply protected himself, who'd used his wealth not to dominate but to heal, who'd proven that second chances could lead to something better than what came before. "Yes," she said, voice breaking. "Absolutely yes." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. He kissed her then, soft and deep, a promise sealed under Boston's twilight sky. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing simultaneously. "The anonymous waitress is marrying a billionaire," Sophia said, shaking her head in disbelief. "The media is going to have a field day." "Let them," Adrian said, pulling her close. "We know the truth. That's all that matters." Below them, the Bennett Cole Center glowed with warm light, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needed it. Inside, people were learning that truth could survive lies, that careers could be rebuilt, that justice, while imperfect and often delayed, was possible. The woman who'd saved the billionaire had saved herself too, and in doing so, she'd saved countless others. The wine was clean, the love was real, the truth had won, and tomorrow, that word that once meant fear now meant forever.